This is one of the coolest conversations I've had on shame, and especially the way that David defines shame. It honestly stuck with me and really is something I keep thinking and thinking about. It is just so fascinating and so powerful and has impacted me in such a deep way to just think about the power of how we can witness, because this is one of his biggest concepts, witnessing. What happens when we witness and how this dissolves shame and how healing that is. So I loved this conversation very much, and I cannot wait for you to hear it too. Welcome to Deep Within. On this show, we dive deep into the nervous system, emotional healing, and transformation from within the body. When I started my personal development journey, it was all in the mind, doing affirmations, visualizations, listening to endless motivational videos. And I found that this approach, without actually getting my body on board, only left me in deeper shame and distress. So this is actually how I discovered somatic body-based healing. My name is Marina Yanai Trainer, and I am the Compassionate Somatic Coach. I'm gentle, sensitive, and I love deep conversations. I'm so excited and so glad you're here so we can feel like we're together in our own little bubble of deep talks. All right, welcome. And my first question is, why did you decide to study and talk about shame?
Well, I grew up in a violent home. And for me, that meant I had a father who used fists and belts and rage in his tone and style. So he was a scary dude. So if I'm a 5 or 6 year old, 7 or 8 year old, and there's a grown human being, in this case, a grown man who is in a mood means there's no person there. It's like, so I lived with that. That was a scary thing and a violent thing and an abusive thing. And then I had a mom who was relatively disempowered. And what that means is that she couldn't bear witness to that. That didn't happen. Your father would never do that, even if it happened right in front of her eyes. She wasn't lying. She couldn't afford or wasn't capable of saying, Marty, that was my father's name, stop. Or David, this is terrible. Or act like that was happening. So not only did I get impacted by my father's violence, I internalized my mother's way of understanding things. So if something happened to me in the world later, I would think, well, maybe that didn't happen. What did I do wrong? I wouldn't think that was bad because my mind got trained, quote unquote, by my mother, right? I'm not saying she was more to blame or anything, right? That's just the situation. It may not have been a mother. It doesn't have to be that way. But in this case, it was, just so we don't put mothers into a certain box. Mothers, they already take too much shit. But I internalized that way of viewing my experience. So if you treated me really badly, I would say, I'm not feeling really good today. And somebody say, what happened during that session? I wouldn't have known that you treated me badly. My brain wouldn't code that. It would think something else. So I got very interested in how come I'm out of touch with my own experience. If I get hurt, I don't even know I'm hurt. And I get a headache later, but I didn't realize I had a bad time that day. Or I'm thinking, what did I do wrong? Or how do I fix myself? As opposed to what's happening for me. So I started studying that way of seeing the world. And I called that shame. What's wrong with me? I'm trying to fix myself and figure myself out as opposed to know what I'm experiencing.
Yeah. It sounds like we had the same childhood, which is wild.
Was Marty your father?
Apparently.
In a way, in a quote unquote.
In a way, yes.
By the way, Marty is no longer on the planet. It's been 25 years and we're doing better, but sometimes we still fight. Okay, so anyway.
Yeah. Well, that was actually a huge curiosity as you're speaking, because when you experience so much invalidation, it becomes very difficult to even see things clearly and then talk about them. I mean, today I was doing a live and I said something about my dad, and then I was like, this is so interesting to even like verbalize. And so I'm wondering what that process was like for you. Like, how did you get to a point where you're able to see it, like actually see it and then talk about it?
Yeah. I mean, I had a certain blessing when I was young, and that is when I was very young, 7, 8, 9. I saw what was happening very clearly in my family. I don't know why, because I wrote notes about it. And I wrote down in a journal, I better remember what's happening because I'll probably forget. And that's what my parents they probably forgot. That's what my child's mom, I wrote that down, I think when I was 12. I better write all this down. And there was something prophetic about that because I did forget, quote unquote, forget, meaning I started doubting myself and not knowing what was happening. I'm not sure what changed that made that happen. Was it just length of time of being soaked in that's not happening? You can't be validated and supported and believed and responded to. But somewhere that went away. But the good part about that is there was like a child in me at a certain age that saw what was happening. So getting a link back to that child was made it a little easy. It still took many years. I think in my 20s, I was not doing well. In my early 30s, I was very depressed. I don't know if I would call it clinical, but I didn't get diagnosed, but I was laying around a lot, soaking in my sadnesses. I don't mean that in a bad way. That's what my body wanted to do. So I was pretty out of touch with things. And somewhere into my mid 30s, I'm 70 now, something started waking up out of that soaking in the sadness about what was happening. And I wanted to study my inner life and learn from people that studied violence and abuse, what we now talk about as trauma. People like Alice Miller and others who talked about abuse. That was the language they used. Started looking into my Jewish history and the traumas about that. How was my family similar to other Jewish families? Many families have violence in those situations, but the nuances of it, what does it have to do with the history that then comes into the family? So I started getting interested in all those things that helped me frame those experiences. Yeah.
Jews are I mean, they're fascinated with trauma. I feel like every time I'm studying, it's like a Jewish person teaching. And that's so interesting. So what did you find is a connection between that trauma and the violence and your heritage?
Well, any family, parents that have trauma story in the background. And then I want to, in parentheses, I want to say, who doesn't in some
I was
way?
just gonna say, like, doesn't everybody? Yeah.
So it's like, so then there's that particular story and narrative. If you were Japanese and your grandparents went through the bombing, that they would have an experience. If you were German and your great grandfather was in Hitler's youth army, I've worked with people like that. That would have that, even though that seems like a perpetrating connection, but it's still a traumatic connection that person will have. And as opposed to a Jewish Russian background, which with my family. So people, the different narratives and stories and ways that they lodge inside people and in ways that they get held by people. So then I know my father has his violence, and other people say my father was violent too. And then my father has a story. So he is part of a story that oppresses him, makes him pressured in a certain kind of way. And then his outlet then is through his wife and children. That would be a common thing. So you have that background story. This is an incredible thing. For some years ago, and by which I mean like 30, I was working with a Swiss psychologist. His name was Max Schupak. He's still around, but I haven't talked to him in many years. And I was telling him stories about my father's violence, and he started weeping. And I thought he was being moved by the pain I suffered as a child and the fear. I was frightened almost all the time in my home. And I said, "You're moved by my story?" And he said, "Yes, but not only." I said, "What's happening?" And he said, "I'm Swiss. Maybe if it wasn't for me," I'm putting quotes because he didn't mean me personally, "maybe your father wouldn't have been like that." And what he meant by that is, again, some people think he's not responsible. He didn't, that's not the point. He's saying there's something called a Swiss person who banked on the Holocaust, who act like they were neutral, who are part of the story, the Jewish story, not the David particular story. That was so, I could weep thinking, that was so deep for me that someone would talk to me like that and say that directly. And he felt it. He was like, maybe if it wasn't for me, again, he didn't mean I did it, I'm bad, I'm guilty. But he felt it in his bones that he's part of the story I was telling. Isn't that profound?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's about accountability. Like when you experience trauma, there's usually very little accountability. I mean, if our parents would actually apologize or, take some responsibility, I don't think it would become so traumatic what they did.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very profound. And what is the relationship between shame and accountability?
Shame happens, and I define shame in very specific ways because most people think shame is just this feeling I feel bad about myself, but most shame is unknown and unconscious. So most people walk around wrapped in that, meaning they're just going on trying to fix what they think is broken in them and not thinking I'm full of shame. I should lose weight. I should stop doing this. I can't believe I said that to Marina on this podcast. What did I do? And I'll sit around and hang with myself, chewing myself up, right? So that happens mostly unconsciously. The connection between shame and accountability. So when a violence happens to someone, an abuse, like my father's fists or belts, or a culture that treats you as a woman like you shouldn't be listened to, or police officer that treats a African-American person a certain way. So all kinds of different violences that happen to people. When that is not witnessed, it's not seen at all, nobody sees it, or witnessed the way my mother did, you could say, that didn't happen. What are you talking about, Marina? There's no sexism in the world. That's just you, right? So that's a way of denying and dismissing your experience. Then what happens to that violence is it gets locked in. It's not a healing balm medicine that's put on it. It's a kind of an imprisonment that's put on it. So the wound stays frozen because I'm not wounded and need help from a story. I'm a screwed up person who gets too many headaches, who gets angry a lot and is depressed and smokes too many cigarettes and eats too much ice cream. Right? That means I'm having all these symptoms that I'm trying to deal with because something's wrong with me, quote unquote. It's okay to address those symptoms, of course, but there's no witnessing of the connection with that story because nobody has ever done that. So accountability is one kind of witness that says, that codes inside of me, oh, something really did happen. Somebody should respond to that. That's a validation of my experience. Like my father, towards the way after I left home, we had a fight about what happened in my childhood, among many fights. And one day he said to me, I was a real bastard, wasn't I? And I said, you really were. And it makes me teary to remember. That was, it wasn't like a lot of accountability. It wasn't like, I'm sorry. Whatever. I don't know. We could say it's the best he could do or not. I don't know. I would love for him to do more. But what went in was, oh, I believe myself a little bit more. I mean, you didn't believe yourself before that? Yes. Can you hear it? Yes. Which is not exactly yes, right? We grow in our belief, and belief in our own experience. That's an incredibly powerful thing. I believe it when I'm happy, when I'm sad, when I'm turned on, when I'm not turned on, when I feel hurt. Incredible. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what do you do today when you have moments when you're invalidating yourself or you're in the shame? Like, what is kind of like your process?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing is to catch it. Oh, that's happening. I'm waking up in the night, didn't get a lot of sleep, and I'm thinking, how do I get back to bed? I'm not going to be able to do well tomorrow. How am I going to perform if I'm still tired? Can you hear the energy?
The looping.
Yeah, now I'm in trouble. Tomorrow's going to go really bad. I can't believe, what did I do? I shouldn't have had that ice cream yesterday. So I'm on a, what's wrong with me? Fix me. There's nobody who's saying to me, what's it like? You're awake now. I'm tired. Tell me about your tiredness. As opposed to, what did you do right and wrong, right? What's it like for you? Have you been tired before and had to work the next day? Yeah, how did it go? There's nobody there who's saying, I'm just interested in you. I don't need to figure out what you did right and wrong. So catching that spin. And most of us live in that because the world treats us that way. If I wrote on social media, I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, and I have
Here's what you should do.
yeah, exactly. No one's going to say, what time were you awake? Me too. Maybe somebody would. What happens to you when you're awake? Do you write poems? Do you do the things you would love to do? Do you scroll the internet and find music that you're in? What are you doing there? No one's going to ask that question. No one's going to witness my experience. So catching it, because we steeped in that allopathic world, let's fix what's wrong with you. Catching it is a big thing. If I can't do anything about that, I will listen to music or do something just to take myself out of that condition. If I can't address it because I'm just too tired or my mind is not clear enough, do anything. Go get a snack, go have a cup of tea, look at a video, put on your favorite music. Look at a flower that you like. Look at photos of a country that you love, or read a poem. Do something to get yourself out. So I will do that sometimes if I'm too tired to actually be able to focus. If I can focus, I'll do something connected to my body. What's happening in your body? I don't know. I didn't sleep last night. What's it like in your body? I should have slept. I should have slept. What's happening in your body? I can feel the tiredness in my head. Go ahead and feel the tiredness. And feeling somatically, as you know, the sensory experiences is a way of witnessing and validating the experience without the discursive narratives that are often shame-based. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Isn't that like the primary job of our parents, to just like witness without fixing? And do you think they suck at it? We all kind of suck at it a little bit because it's very triggering. Like, it reminds us of like what's wrong with us to see somebody suffering.
Yeah. I'm sure that's in the background. I think very few people have an experience of being asked the simple questions. I can work with a person who's smoking cigarettes. I'm thinking of a person, 40 years, 2 packs a day, and no one ever asked them, what's it like to smoke a cigarette? I don't mean like it's bad for my health. That's not what it's like. Well, I put the cigarette to my lips, I inhale it, I feel this sense of my lungs filling up. Like, no, 10 minutes. That person will tell me things that they never knew. Not because I'm so smart, I think I am smart, but that's not the point. No one's ever said, what's it feel like in your chest when you inhale that cigarette? And I don't mean what's it feel like, doesn't it feel bad? I mean, because it might feel really good to have your lungs filled up. I'm not saying you should smoke, right? But they're having an experience. I've worked with people who are chronically ill, and they've been to lots of doctors, and I'll say, tell me about your symptom. Well, I have tinnitus, I have ringing in my ear. And I said, oh, can you make the sound of the ringing in the ear? They look at me like, why would I do that? I'm like, I want to know what you're experiencing. Is it like, is it a mild tone? And they've been to a lot of doctors and no one's asked them. That's true with most things. The questions leave out experience very quickly. As soon as I can diagnose it, oh, it's sharp pain, tingling in your tooth. Okay, it's a nerve damage. Like, no, like we're done, right? Yeah.
Why is witnessing so healing? Like, it's like we're not changing anything at all.
Yeah.
But then, according to what you're saying, it changes like everything, right?
Yeah. There's a great poem by Galway Connell. It's called St. Francis and the Sow, the pig. I may not remember it exactly. And he says, see if I can remember the line. The bud, look at the bud of the flower, the bud stands for everything. Even for those things that don't flower, because everything flowers eventually, he says. But you have to reteach, he says in the poem, reteach a thing its loveliness. Right? So isn't that a beautiful line? So, and he said, that's witnessing. So every difficulty is like an infolded flower. It's a bud. And what makes the bud open up? Being seen, quote unquote, by the sun, by the rain, etc. It doesn't need to be fixed. It just needs nature's light, basically. So things, when they're seen outside of shame's lens, let's fix it, what's wrong with you, why did you do that, you must have been wearing the wrong clothes, or people wouldn't treat you that way, you were angry, of course people are upset with you. Once we remove that and just say, I don't have to be positive, oh, that's so good about you, tell me more, I want to know more, what's it like to be a woman for you who has a Jewish background who did this, what's it like, David, when that father was there, what's it like when you're up in the night? That acts like a sunshine. The more pure it is, the less evaluative, even positively evaluative. The more neutral it is, the more the bud begins to do its thing. What nature would do. It kind of goes, and then it gets upset, and then it gets grief, and then it gets happy, and then it wants to make friends. It starts doing its thing. So I go with that, with the poetry of that. The thing is a bud, and buds flower if they're just being looked at and wanting to be known. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
So what is shame? Like, I'm catching that it's a kind of experience, or it's almost like a lens through which we live life. And then it's also like an emotion. Like, can you kind of break it down for us?
Yeah. Shame is an internalized witness. Like my internalized, my mother's way of looking at myself. It's an internalized witness that denies, dismisses, and gaslights, or neglects totally. So if you're laying on the street and you're bleeding, I may not say, you're not bleeding. I could say, get up, it's not a big deal. That would be a kind of witnessing of what's happening for you. And then if that atmosphere is around and you were vulnerable as a child or as an adult, you're vulnerable, then you would start thinking when you fall, nothing's happening. And you'd be bleeding, right? And you wouldn't be thinking, gosh, my leg is really hurting me. It's nothing. So you would be just doing that same thing. You'd internalize that. If nobody sees, nobody recognizes, nobody says, oh my gosh, are you okay? Then you start thinking, feeling like you don't matter very much. Somebody would respond to that. Even if it's nobody's fault, you would take that in. So when that kind of world witnessing, denying, gaslighting, what's wrong with you? You must have done something wrong. That didn't really happen. It's not a big deal. You're too much this, you're too much that. If you weren't so sensitive, those are gaslighting. Or I don't notice it. Nobody notices at all. Then we start looking at ourselves in a way where we don't notice ourselves, right? Mirroring that, not noticing or doing those things. And that way of witnessing ourselves is shame itself. It creates feelings, but shame itself purely is that way of seeing oneself. So we do that, then it creates certain feelings, but it's not a feeling in and of itself. It's a way of seeing ourselves. So if you think, I look in the mirror and I'm ugly, that's a violence that just happened. And if you went, shit, that's painful. When I look in the mirror and have thoughts that I'm ugly, no shame enters. Still get hurt. It still feels really bad and painful. And if somebody got punched in the face and somebody said, ow, how you doing? That really hurts. You still have the bruise in the face. The violence happened, but you don't walk around thinking, what's wrong with me? Why did that happen? You go get help and you say, Marina, I got a hurt eye. Maybe you should go to the doctor. I address the wound. But if shame enters, you don't address the wound. You're in this internalized shaming world and what's wrong with me? What should I do? I'm a screwed up person. And then your system gets wrapped in and the wound doesn't ever get touched. It doesn't get the light. It just gets frozen in that spot. And then the wound perseverates, right? Like any wound would. It gets infected and gets funky and starts spreading out to the early relationships. So my relationships, right? And patterns in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've also met people, and I kind of had a mom like this. At some point, she was like this, where they're told, you're so perfect. Like, you're so great, even when they mess up. Is that also like a way of shaming? Because, you know, what you're describing is like kind of the negative aspect. Yeah. But what about like the other opposite?
Absolutely. Anything that denies, dismisses, or gaslights experience. So if you smack me in the face and I didn't act like that happened, then your system might start coding it as nothing's happening. So your system would then start interpreting that particular energy in you, that violence, that aggression in you in a certain way, and you wouldn't get to know that aggression. You wouldn't get to think, oh, I really wanted to use it. Actually, I wanted to tell David something really strong. I didn't want to punch him in the face. I wanted to give him some words or whatever, or this belonged to other places. So none of that would end up the growth of you into that aggressive slap. You're not slapping me, everybody. Right? The growth of you would be like, wow, I know it. I have a slap in my hand. What should I do with that? I guess I wanted to tell him that's not okay with me. Well, you would grow and learn. You would say, I want to use it other places. None of that will happen. So if somebody mirrors back, you're fine, it can be very difficult. If a person's suffering and a person says you're fine, whoa, very big deal. I worked with a woman who was bulimic many years ago. I've done a lot of work with eating disorders. So this is a semi-generic story, not a particular person, but the specifics help us understand it. And she was a size 0 and would go to the gym and pass out because she had so few calories in her. So when she started exercising, her body would go, I don't have any energy. And she'd sit down and I'd say, what's it? Didn't anybody notice? And she, like, what did you eat? I ate no calorie frozen ice sorbet and non-fat broth. I'm like, didn't anybody in your family say what? And they say, nobody noticed. Everybody thought I was very attractive. You look great. So that's a very painful experience because nobody's thinking, there's a violence happening here. This person's denying themselves of nourishment. That's a pretty big violence to the body and to the system. Nobody notices. People think she's doing great. That would be common in that culture. Like, let's starve ourselves so we look a certain way. That's not the most uncommon thing if you do some research on that.
Yeah, you have a book on this as well, right?
Yeah, on body. You can't judge a body by its cover. I think it's gonna be reissued by a publisher. I had self-published that book, but I've done some. I'm featured in an upcoming documentary. It's going to take about another year on eating disorders. It was started with a Slovakian documentarian, Maria Matek. Anyway, she's brilliant, and anyway, we got connected, and she asked me if I could do what I do, an unshaming thing with some people. And I'm like, yes, I can. If there's a proper consent channel for these people working with a man that they don't know, with a translator, those kinds of things. And I got to work with 2 different women, and some of it's on film now. So it's really
I would love to watch that.
It's amazing. This was one of the things that was amazing. I can talk a little bit about it, but I can't show any of the video clips because the documentary's not out, and it's proprietary. But a woman said to me, she only eats a limited number of foods. I don't remember a number. I want to say 6 today, but it was very few foods, and she won't eat anything else. And then, of course, tried to get help on this, and help means, how do we get her to eat more food? Which is good. We want her to eat more food. I don't know. It'd be good for her body if she ate more foods and was more properly nourished. Okay. But no one says to her, I want to understand what's happening. Tell me about what's happening. So not just like, why are you doing that? Well, I'm a screwed up person, right? Not that. The experience. I said, what happens if someone said you should eat another food? Because slow down. If you think of the basic intervention most people and doctors and therapists would make is, let me try to get you to eat something. Eat a little bit of something, sweetheart, right? My grandmother might do that. My doctor might do that in some way. So I said to her, tell me about a food you wouldn't eat. I would never eat meat. Okay, let's imagine I had meat in my hands. I'm replicating what the doctors and culture are doing. Let's imagine that. And I'm trying to get you to eat it. And she puts her hands on her throat. She goes, I would start choking. Wow. And if I insisted, she said, my throat would close. I wouldn't be able to breathe. That's incredible. So she's saying, her body is saying, you try to get me to do something that I don't want, I'll die. I'm not making that up. That's what her body is saying.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very powerful response. She's not only a disempowered person, she is also, but that's a very powerful response. So I asked her if she could take her hand away from her throat and show me the choking energy. And also, rather than, I don't want you to hurt yourself, hand on the throat, my throat is choking. Feel the choking and show me what a hand would do to close the throat. You should eat meat. She squeezes, right? And I asked her to put it on my forearm. Make believe my forearm is like a throat, not yours. I don't want you to choke. And I started going, you should eat meat. And now she has both hands on my arm, quote unquote, choking it. So her experiences tell me to do something that I say no to, and I will grab you and I will express some power that lives inside of me. Now I do it to myself because I don't have any freedom to do it anywhere else. I can't say to somebody yet. That may take a while, but this is one of the rare times that she, as a woman, and her particular story, where she is expressed, especially to a man, let me show you who I am when you try to get me to do something. So that's her relationship with the therapeutic community. You try to get me to do something, I would love to choke you. I don't mean kill, right? But I express power to say, no, I won't, you can't get me to do it, what I don't want to do. So if you go in an unshaming route, the experiential, and I just witness her experience, I'm not trying to change it, I'm trying to get to know it, then the bud opens up and says, there's a lot of power in me, and I don't want to be pushed to do something I don't want to do. And then we can find out stories about when she is made to do things she didn't want to do. But all of that particular story wrapped up in a pattern that's unfree to tell its story and to show and to release the power that she has to resist. Right now, the resistance she has is not to eat. Not a bad, I'm putting quotes on it. It's not a good thing that she resists in that way. But if you can frame it properly, it's good that something in her wants to resist something that should be resisted. Misdirected, we can say that. But we don't want to take away from her that her body wants to say, absolutely not. You won't get me to do anything. We want to offer that back to her.
Yeah. And it's kind of then organically unfolds in a way. Like when something is witnessed, it starts to unwind organically, would you say?
Yeah. Like the flower. It's nature. Nature does that. Herself, I would say, gendered. Nature does that. Given certain things, our feelings unfold like their nature. Our body symptoms and body problems, their nature. I'm not saying they're good to get cancer or something. I'm saying that there's energies in the body that will unfold and express themselves if they're given the sunshine of a certain kind of witness that doesn't deny, gaslight, etc. Yeah.
What about when somebody in childhood makes mistakes or does something that they shouldn't do, and their parents are always positive or always giving them, do you know what I mean? Like reinforcement. Is that also shaming? Like we typically think of shaming as very negative, right? Like you're bad, you're wrong.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've just met people like that were given so much positive reinforcement that was also gaslighting because the opposite.
Yeah, you're saying it very clearly. It's a gaslighting. If I've done something that injures or let's say injures something, property or a person in some way, then that behavior needs a witness. Somebody should notice it. Does that mean I should be punished? You have to talk about that a little bit. If punishment means you should hurt me because of it, which is often, that will be shaming. That doesn't mean you can't say, I won't let you do that, time out. You're not going to get to be around me if you scream in my ear. That I'm not saying I'm going to do that to get you. I'm going to do that because that's what you get back from me. Or if you do something strong and I kind of go, hey, and I yell, that's not shaming. It's a natural reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe hard on a child. Yeah.
It's a consequence, right? A result of a consequence of what,
That's right. But that's different from saying, you're bad, I'm going to hurt you because of it. That whole thing won't be a learning experience for that person. But natural reactions are, don't fucking touch me like that. That's not, I'm going to hurt you. Get away from me.
Yeah.
That's not, that may be painful for a person, but that's not you deserve to be hurt because of it. It's a different. So those natural reactions, if they're left out, very difficult, because the person doesn't have the intimacy with another human being. You're saying the relational consequence. Because sometimes I'll work with parents and they'll think, what should I do? What should I do? And I'm going to say, what's it feel like inside of you when that happens? Well, I'm trying to do the right thing. I understand. What's it feel like? Well, I feel like I just want to close my ears and walk away. That has to be lived. Now, how much you do with how old the child is, but then I want to withdraw from you. That has to come in. You have to, and then the person will trust the relationship. Not because if you bypassed who you are and you think of what should I do, then the relationship is not trustworthy. I don't know what's actually happening for you. I don't have the consequence naturally of you wanting to yell at me, you wanted to smack me. Don't do it physically, but right. But something, all those kinds of things don't happen. I'm not in a secure relationship. I can't trust the relationship because what's happening for you is not known, is not coming back to me. So that's a very difficult holding environment. I'm not seen in general. So I'll feel invisible, not being noticed. And then a kind of shame of nothing I do really matters and impacts a person. There's a lot of shame that can enter there. It's a very important what you're saying, because some of the shame enters from incredible violence, a sexual violence to a young person. We know those are, but a lot of the violences look smaller, but if they're not witnessed, it could just be, you have two brothers and I'm the father and I never listen to you and I only listen to them. That doesn't look like as violent as a sexual violence. And when you grow up, that could be a deadly impact on you. It might not be.
The neglect, the emotional neglect.
You might think my voice doesn't matter and only other people's does, and I should just shut up and listen, and etc. And if you have a big voice, that could be very, very painful for you. And you could think, my voice doesn't matter, I don't matter. And you could think, well, if I don't matter, I guess my life doesn't matter. So that could internalize. Not for everybody, people do different things with it, but what happens with it because of the way shame holds it could lead to as dramatic a symptom as a more heavy violence, a heavy violence that's witnessed. Do you know Maya Angelou's story by chance?
Her life story? I don't think so.
Yeah. So Maya Angelou, some people will know she died, I want to say 7, 8 years ago. An African-American writer, poet, speaker, amazing. People Google her and listen to a YouTube of her reading a poem, and she has an amazing voice. So when she was, I want to say 7, I could get these ages wrong, but around 7, this is, I should say trigger warning, people tell me to do that because it's a violent piece of story. Then she was raped by a man, an adult male. Slowing down so that to bypass the feeling level of that. A rape, a girl rape, a black girl rape, all that's part of her story. And she, in her child's mind, was thinking, should I tell anybody? Because if I tell the people who love me, that guy could get really badly hurt. So in her child's mind, she's like, I don't think I want something really, really bad to happen. But she does tell. And then a few days later, I think it's a sheriff comes to the door and they find the rapist man dead, kicked to death. Isn't that incredible already? Such an impactful, the whole story is so many things. And then for her, she's like, oh shit. Right?
I caused that.
I caused that. And then we think, we don't want her to think that. Of course not. But you have to hang with the child's story and right. It's sort of like, yep, I can see that could be one thing that happens. So no one knows it. So she decides not to speak. And they don't know what to do with her because she won't use her voice to make words. She writes notes. And they send her to her grandmother, who she called Mama, and they said, Mama will know how to care for Maya. And then she went to grandma, and she didn't speak for 5.5 years. No, not to nobody, even to Mama. She wrote notes. She went to school. She wrote notes. They asked her name. She wrote notes. And Mama said, don't you worry. You're going to be a great teacher someday. This is a kind of a witness, right? She wasn't, I got you. And Mama wasn't like, nothing's happened. Mama was like, I got you, right? And 5.5 years later, grandma says to her, Maya's sitting under the porch reading poetry, memorizing Shakespeare plays in total. Sonnets, all kinds of, she's sitting memorizing. She's like literate as heck for a youngster, reading everything in the black library, going into the white library. I think it was in somewhere down south of the United States. And then Mama says, you'll never understand all those poems unless you hear them rolling off your own lips. Sunday, you're going to go to church and do a poetry recital. What? I haven't spoken in 5.5 years. Mama seems to know something. But the reason I tell that story is, one, there's this incredible wounding that she experiences. Again, the rape of a child and a black child in a racist country, and all this goes in. And she's cooking up a voice. In the silence, she's cooking that up. Something alchemical is happening. That doesn't mean it's good. She needed that to be a poet. All that bullshit. She'd get the hell out of here. She was already that without that, but that's what happens for her. And then if you listen to her now, she wrote 6 volumes of autobiography telling that story. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings was the first one of those, and many books of poetry. So you have this kind of alchemy that cooks when you get a certain kind of witness. In this case, grandma, Mama knew something about what to do. I want to tell you one more Maya story. Can I tell you one more Maya story?
Yes.
Of course I can. I'm just conscious about, because her stories are beautiful. So I loved Maya Angelou because she taught me so much. Not personally, but personally, I didn't hang out with her. I went to see her a number of times, but I read her interviews and bought her cookbook, even though I wasn't going to cook the foods in there because I wanted to see what she had to say. And in the cookbook, she has a recipe for red velvet cake. And in that, she tells a story that I hadn't heard anywhere else. So when she was in her silent period, she went to school, and many of the children teased her. You're stupid, she's the idiot, she's retarded, etc., because she wouldn't speak. And a new school year starts, a new teacher who doesn't know about her story and her non-speaking, and humiliates her in the class. I'm not going to let you get away without speaking, dumb, I don't know, I can't remember, whatever word she used to humiliate her in a public seating. So Maya goes home to grandma, crying. What happened? And then her brother was there to tell, and then she writes down the story to tell. So grandma says, talk about accountability and witnessing. Grandma says, we're going back to school. I'm going with you. Grandma goes, gets in front of the class with all the students there, walks up to the teacher, smacks her in the face, right? In public, right? The way
I love it.
That's smack.
Such a great redemption story for every traumatized child. Yeah.
And then she says, I shouldn't have done that. But she already does, right? You know what I'm saying? Both are true. I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to do it, right? It's so beautiful. And then she says to the teacher, this makes me cry too, you have grandchildren, ma'am? Like, maybe you could understand what's happening right now? This is such a gorgeous. Then she takes Maya home and spends hours making her favorite cake, red velvet cake, and gives it to her. And listen to these words. She says, this will never make up for what happened to you today.
What a special grandma.
Now think of what the witnessing she goes in. Not talking about even the rape anymore. Just being put down by just in public. That hurt to your worth. I can never make up for that by going to school, doing all that. Then think of what she soaks in now about her own preciousness as a human being and as a person. This will never make up for this. It's the best I can give you.
So beautiful.
Yeah. And that's a witness.
Cool. Right? Yeah. And isn't that the difference between people who go through really hard things, and some people get traumatized and some people not as much, maybe because they've had that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
We all need that. Maya Angelou said,
Yes.
the last time I saw her, she said, my goal in life was to be like my grandmother for as much of the world as I could. To be that way. You got hurt, something happened to you. I believe in you. I'll hold you for the years it takes for you to find your way and not dismiss it and think that you're also gifted and special and all these things. Help you come out when it's time. And act like I'm protecting even your silence. I'll even act like I'm protecting that. Like, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that there is so much truth about it. Like, it's almost like unshaming is like it's shame. The opposite of shame is truth and vulnerability. And sometimes we can say, I've had those experiences when I've said really difficult things that I perceive are going to hurt someone, but they're the truth. And it's been so healing because it's been vulnerable and true. And this is what I'm actually feeling or experiencing. Yeah. So recently I've had a lot of experiences of truth being very healing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, how can we be good witnesses? I feel like especially men, but not only, I totally resonate with wanting to fix, or when someone is having a big emotion, you just want them to be better. It's very hard to sit with it. And so in relationships, how can we be good witnesses?
Yeah. It's a great question. I mean, I'm thinking there's so many answers that would be good, and everybody would have an answer for themselves. It's really useful to do, as you know, one's own work or inner work, however you look at that, so that you can hang and hold an experience, right? So if you're in a rage and I've never felt my own rage and knew what to do with it, then I'm either going to be freaked out or try to calm you down, or I'm not going to be interested. Or if you're hurt and I'm kind of like, then because I haven't ever had that experience and I haven't been able to hold that. So doing our own work, getting used to stronger and stronger experiences, you start mild and being able to say, I can hang with this a little bit without hurting myself and without trying to make it go away.
And sorry to interrupt you. One thing I do find is that because we don't always, we haven't always done all the work around all the things, obviously. And so something recently that I learned is to say, this is so scary for me, watching you.
Beautiful.
Is better than trying to fix you. This is Beautiful. What it's making me feel,
That's gorgeous, Marina. I'm thinking about times when this person tells a story and I can feel myself slightly dissociating. That's too strong a word for some people, but meaning you're saying, if Maya Angelou was telling me her story, I might kind of go, whoa. And I'm starting to not hear certain words. It's a subtle thing. I'm not saying, David's gone totally. But then I might tell the person, that's so strong, I can hardly hear it. It's so, and let my body feel it. I'd have to go much slower. So that can be that's good feedback to a person about how strong the experience is also. But to me, the basic framing question for witnessing another is, what's it like to be you? Depressed. What's it like to be you? Snorting crack. What's it like to be you so lonely? What's it like to be you wanting to go back to the same person? Not why. What's it like? Gosh, I can't stand not looking for their texts. What's it like to be for you in the middle of the night? What's it like to be you? And fill in the blank when. That question is a medicinal attitude. And then if you really want to know, because people are not used to answering it, they might take a little bit. If you can help people get into their body feelings, but that takes a little bit of skill. Takes not a lot to do the fundamentals. Can you feel it inside? You could have much more refined skills. I teach people more refined skills, but what's it like for you, and what are you feeling inside of you? Those are like questions that open a lot of doors that most people can learn to ask those things. Yeah.
I love that. And you would talk like that to a partner.
Yeah, definitely. I have a wife of 22 years. I say I would ask her in that way because we don't kind of need that language. She knows. I say, what's going on? Tell me what are you feeling? How are you feeling? What are you feeling? What are you feeling is usually better than how are we feeling, because how are we feeling usually is an evaluation. I'm feeling good. I'm not feeling good.
Yeah.
With my wife, I used to say, tell me all your feelings. And then, and then she was like, no one's ever said that to me. Yeah.
I love that. You know, Dan Siegel, I heard him say once, and I just loved it so much, that the best compliment he ever received from a client was that she felt.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Like I've worked with people for 40 years, and I've developed certain techniques that I really like. I teach them to other people. I think they're really high level skills. And I've worked with many people who I thought, wow, I helped them understand something about what's going on in a really profound way. And then later on, a year or two later, maybe I'll see them on Facebook or something like that. And then they'll say, I really felt seen by you. and I'm thinking, but what about that insight? This incredible insight, which is not irrelevant. I'm not saying those are irrelevant, but but some people, what they held was, wow, I was in an environment where somebody really wanted to know me and see me.
Yeah.
So that's what they took in with all my nuance.
Yeah.
That big thing. Yeah.
And it's so rare. It's so simple and it's so rare,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I could talk to you for 10 more hours. Like, this is so fascinating.
By the way, your questions are great. I mean, and the way you question them, it makes me very I want to explain. There's a little kid in me. I have a lot of.
I love it.
Luckily, I have a kid. Up until 50, I didn't. I was much more mature. I was an attorney for 8 years, so I was very mature. I'm teasing. But the little kid in me is like, oh, well, these are great questions. I've been thinking about these things I've written 5 books about these things. So I get.
Well, maybe we need part 2, because I love, this is so profound, and it made me think about a lot of things. So thank you so much.
Can I show you my book, my recent book?
Yes. Oh, yes. Sorry. This is my last question. I want to know about your books, how people can work with you, and all those things.
Yeah. This is my, I got to get through all the poetry books to find. This is the book came out a little over a year ago. It's called The Unshaming Way. And
I need to read that for sure. I can't wait.
It was beautifully endorsed by Gabor Mate, who talks about how powerful, my word, but did very strong endorsement of my approach to shame.
That's amazing. He's incredible.
Yeah. In 2 weeks, there's going to be a workbook that comes out, and it's going to be the Unshaming Way workbook. And it's basically it has sections on addictions, on dependencies, on codependencies, on feelings, on chronic illnesses, on social issues, social violence, racism, etc. But with exercises. This is how you can unshame them, walking through that.
I love that. That's brilliant.
Check it out.
I hope you sent us all those links, because I want that workbook.
If you talk to Kristen, and now this is a cool thing. So this book is now in 9 languages. I'm really proud of that. And I just got a copy of this one. This is the Romanian version.
Oh, wow.
And I looked at this, it tickled the child in me. I'm like, oh, that's cool. What does it say? I don't know. Unshaming Way somehow.
It's really cool.
And this was my last book in Slovakian.
Wow. And they all have different covers for people who are just listening to the audio. That's really cool.
Anyway, I got excited to see those. Yeah. So the workbook is coming out. It's really good. I got some really good help. I can always get help meaning people who are really good writers who understand my work to help make it flow and smooth and user friendly and things like that. So I got good help on the workbook of somebody who's used to making workbooks. What kind of things should go in this? But it's really designed so that you can walk yourself through step by step those things. I don't do one-on-one work. I haven't for some years, but people can find me on Instagram, and if they look me up, David Bedrick, the last name is Bedrick, like bedrock. If you look me up, you'll find all kinds of trainings, like year-long trainings if you want to learn to coach or facilitate or develop your therapeutic skills, or 2-3 hour things. Some of them are very inexpensive. Some of them are very expensive. Some of them are like $7,000. Some of them are $50. Many things are no cost. I've written like 90 essays for Psychology Today. You can just find those free. On YouTube, there are like hour-long videos of me working with people. You can just watch those.
Oh, wow.
At any cost. I think there's like 20 of those episodes where people just said, I'm open to doing this in public. And I'm like, okay. Or I never met a person before, and they would just come and I'd say, I'm just going to show what it looks like to do that. So there's a range of, you can read posts and reels, you can watch YouTube videos or read essays, or you can get any of my now 5 books that are around.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much. I loved this conversation. I'm sure everybody will check out the things, and thanks for your time so much.
Thank you, Marina.
Thank you so much for joining me and listening to this episode. If you liked it, please make sure to leave me a review so that more beautiful humans can get to this podcast, and subscribe to the show. And please do share it with a friend who would benefit. And I always love to hear from all of you on Instagram, so visit me there at marina.y.t. I share really awesome content and would love to hear your comments about the episodes. Until next time, I love you so much and I appreciate you. Have the most beautiful day.